January 1, 2026. New Smyrna Beach, Florida. It was supposed to be the height of the new year, sun, chrome, and the roar of thousands of engines. But in an instant, a gas station transforms into a kill zone. Two rival empires, the Mongols and the Warlocks, collide in broad daylight. For 8 minutes, the law doesn't exist. Bullets fly past families. Tourists dive for cover behind gas pumps. Children scream as the Wild West returns to the 21st century. The bikers thought they owned the streets. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong, because while the smoke was still clearing, the FBI was already spinning a web that would trigger the largest dismantling of outlaw motorcycle clubs in American history. Operation Mongolian Beef, the invasion. Fast forward 4 months. The sun hasn't even risen over Volusia County when the silence is shattered by flashbangs and the heavy boots of federal agents. This isn't a routine patrol, it's Operation Mongolian Beef. The scale is unprecedented. We're talking about a multi-state blitz involving FBI field offices from Jacksonville to Newark, Homeland Security, U.S. Marshals, and dozens of sheriff's departments. This wasn't a drug bust. This was an invasion. The target? The Mongols. By the time the dust settled, 28 members were in zip ties, including the chapter president, snatched directly from his home. Over 40 firearms were seized from the Edgewater clubhouse. But as Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood stood before the cameras, his message wasn't just for Florida. It was a warning shot heard across the globe. You are not going to come into my county and think you own the streets. For 8 minutes, you owned it. But we're coming for everything. But here is the chilling reality. Florida was just the laboratory. The government had a new weapon, and they were about to use it to erase the 1%ers from the map. The legal guillotine, aggravated rioting. How do you take down an entire brotherhood overnight? You change the rules of the game. Florida implemented a brutal new legal statute, aggravated rioting. Under this law, if 25 or more people participate in a violent clash, it's no longer a simple brawl. It's a second-degree felony. Every single person present faces a 15-year maximum prison sentence. The message from the DOJ is clear. If you're wearing the vest, you're doing the time. The Houston bloodbath, the Bandidos death warrant. While the Mongols were falling in the east, the fat Mexican, the symbol of the Bandidos, was being hunted in the west. In Houston, Texas, federal prosecutors unsealed a 22-count indictment that reads like a Shakespearean tragedy written in grease and blood. The charges? Racketeering, assault, and murder. But the most bone-chilling revelation was the smash-on-sight order. Internal documents revealed that Bandido national leadership had issued a direct command. Kill members of the rival gang Beast, wherever you find them. This wasn't just a rivalry, it was a scorched earth policy. High-speed highway shootouts and restaurant parking lot executions became the norm. Now, David Vargas and 13 other high-ranking members face mandatory life sentences or the death penalty. The Bandidos, an empire of 3,000 members worldwide, are now staring at an existential void. Their hierarchical structure, once their greatest strength, has become their roadmap to prison. The cliffhanger, the fall of the first families. For 70 years, the Hells Angels were the gold standard of outlaw culture. They survived wars, undercover infiltrations, and internal purges. But in late 2024 and throughout 2025, that 70-year-old fortress began to crumble. In Raleigh, North Carolina, the New Year's Day celebration of 2023 ended in a cold-blooded execution on a public street. The victim, Jonas Padilla, a member of the Pagans. The suspects, 4 men tied to the Hells Angels and the Red Devils. As the mugshots of Vidal Reed, Anthony Cheever, Martinez Starks, and David Stevens flashed across the news, the true motive emerged, and it was hauntingly petty. According to court documents, This wasn't just about turf. It started with the theft of a jacket, a piece of leather that has now cost several men their lives and others their freedom. The final reckoning. From the Mongols in Florida to the Bandidos in Texas and the Hells Angels in the Carolinas, the map of outlaw America is being redrawn in federal ink. The coordinated assault by the FBI suggests that 2025 isn't just another year of arrests. It is the year the government decided that the outlaw era must end. The clubs that have stood for decades are being wiped out overnight. Chapters are vanishing. The 1%ers are being hunted by a 100% committed federal force. The question is no longer who is the toughest club on the road. The only question left is, when the engines finally go silent, will there be anyone left to tell the story? The Dairy Queen Massacre. It was a warm July night in 2023 at a Dairy Queen parking lot. It should have been a scene of Americana, ice cream, and summer air. Instead, it became a theater of organizational enforcement. 8 defendants descended upon members of the Pagans, leaving behind a trail of blood and shell codes. But this wasn't just a random act of violence. This was the trigger. The ATF special agent in charge didn't just issue a statement. He issued a death warrant for the lifestyle. Outlaw motorcycle gangs are notorious for lawless behavior. To every Hells Angels chapter, you're next. The Bakersfield sweep, wiping the map. Fast forward to June 2024. In Bakersfield, California, the Hells Angels thought they ran the town. They didn't just have a presence, they had an empire. Then, in a single, surgical strike, the Kern County Sheriff's Office did the unthinkable. They didn't just arrest a few bad apples. They arrested the entire chapter. From the president and vice president down to 5 full-patch members, the entire leadership was hauled off in zip ties. The charges? A laundry list of nightmares: kidnapping, first-degree robbery, assault with a firearm, and even elder abuse. But the real blow wasn't the handcuffs, it was the evidence. 25 firearms, high-capacity magazines, and every scrap of gang paraphernalia were hauled away. The Kern County Sheriff sent a shockwave through the community. In 2024, the patch on your back isn't a badge of honor, it's Exhibit A. The global net, from California to the North Island. If the bikers thought they could flee across borders, they were dead wrong. July 2025. New Zealand. In a massive operation spanning the North Island, the Five Eyes intelligence alliance proved that the war on bikers has gone global. In a synchronized hit, the president, vice president, and sergeant-at-arms of the Wanganui Hells Angels were taken down simultaneously. The haul was staggering: cocaine, meth, and nearly $2.5 million in assets. Motorcycles, luxury cars, 3 properties, and even jet skis, all forfeited to the state. This wasn't just a local bust, it was a demonstration of international coordination. American intelligence sharing with New Zealand police to decapitate a club that operates in over 30 countries. The walls aren't just closing in, they're disappearing. The RICO weapon, turning a bar fight into terrorism. How do you dismantle a brotherhood that has lasted for 70 years? You use the RICO Act. Federal prosecutors have discovered the ultimate legal cheat code. RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, allows the government to link individual crimes into a single, massive criminal enterprise. A bar fight? Now it's racketeering. Moving a small bag of product? That's conspiracy. A parking lot assault? That's terrorism in aid of racketeering. The Pagans learned this the hard way in August 2024. In Kansas City, 18 members were indicted on charges that detailed a systematic smash-on-sight policy. They didn't just happen to run into rivals, they hunted them. From chasing victims off the road in Blue Springs to coordinated hits in Topeka, the evidence was ironclad. By May 2025, the dominoes began to fall as top members like Christopher McGowan and Brandon Hodge pleaded guilty, staring down the barrel of life in federal prison. The 14-year shadow, the Vagos reckoning. But if you think the feds have a short memory, look at the Vagos. With 4,000 members across 7 countries, they were a transnational powerhouse. They thought they got away with the 2011 murder of a Hells Angel at the Nugget Hotel and Casino in Nevada. They were wrong. Federal prosecutors waited over a decade, quietly building a RICO case that would eventually snare 23 members across Hawaii, California, and Nevada. They didn't just want the shooter, they wanted the organization. They proved that in the eyes of the law, the patch you wear makes you part of a conspiracy before you even pull a trigger. The blueprint for destruction. Law enforcement has finally cracked the code on how to kill a club from the inside out. They are using a 5-point strategy of total attrition, surgical decapitation, target the president and sergeant at arms simultaneously. Without a brain, the body dies. Financial starvation, seize the bikes, the houses, and the bank accounts. A club can't fight a legal war if they can't pay for gas. The symbolism ban. In New Zealand, new laws made wearing a patch a criminal offense. Within 24 hours, 12 people were behind bars just for what they were wearing. The multi-agency blitz, like Operation Mongolian Beef, dozens of agencies now work as one. Breaking the code, the legendary blue wall of silence in biker culture, it's cracking. When faced with a life sentence, even the most loyal 1%er starts to talk. The cliffhanger, the outlaw's last stand. The Hells Angels are reeling. The Mongols are decimated. The Vagos are in chains. But there was one club that thought they were the exception. The Outlaws. They watched the others fall, believing their internal security was impenetrable and their members were unbreakable. But in June 2025, the Outlaws realized that the greatest threat wasn't the FBI outside their gates. It was the man standing right next to them in the clubhouse. What did the feds find inside the Outlaws' inner circle that changed everything? And who was the high-ranking member that finally traded his vest for a wire? The traditional code of silence was built for a world of dark alleys and quiet handshakes. But in 2025, that code met its greatest enemy, the smartphone. In Indiana, it took only one viral video to dismantle a fortress. 6 members of an outlaw club were caught on camera at Pike's Pub, brutally beating a man while screaming racial slurs. Within days, the FBI and local task forces turned the state into a dragnet. The manhunt was surgical. One member was snatched in Lima, Ohio, while delivering materials to a tank plant. Another was found sweating it out at a remote lake property in Steuben County. For decades, these men relied on the fact that witnesses were too scared to talk. Now, they didn't need witnesses. They had high-definition video evidence and social media scrutiny that made prosecution a slam dunk. But as these 6 men sat in their cells, they didn't realize they weren't just being charged with an assault. They were becoming the newest bricks in a massive RICO wall. The arsenal in the living room. While Indiana was reeling, the Vagos, a club with 4,000 members worldwide, were being picked apart in California. In July 2024, deputies raided the Antelope Valley chapter, and what they found wasn't just criminal, it was chilling. Loaded firearms were found stuffed into Vagos' riding jackets, left casually on a couch next to playing children. They found a pistol hidden inside a motorcycle frame. But then, they uncovered the heavy hardware, a fully automatic machine gun and a 40mm grenade launcher. This is the FBI's new strategy, the paper trail of blood. Every weapon found, every drug bust in Tasmania, where police recently seized meth and automatic rifles from an outlaw official, is no longer treated as an isolated crime. Under the RICO Act, these are predicate acts. That 40mm launcher isn't just a weapons charge, it's evidence that the entire organization is a criminal enterprise. Adapt or die, the Calgary experiment. Is there any way for the old guard to survive? In July 2025, the Calgary chapter of the Hells Angels tried a radical new tactic: compliance. During their national gathering, 600 full-patch members descended on the city. The police were everywhere, waiting for a single punch to be thrown so they could trigger a massive crackdown. But the bikers did something the feds didn't expect. They used shuttle buses to avoid DUI charges. They cooperated with liquor inspectors. They stayed quiet. By the end of the weekend, 145 bikers were ejected from businesses, but 0 were arrested for violence. The Calgary chapter showed the world a new model of survival. But while they were playing nice in Canada, their brothers across the ocean were burning. The Romanian connection. In February 2025, the founder of a Romanian Hells Angels chapter was sentenced to 25 years in a U.S. federal prison. His crime? Attempting to import 400 kilograms of cocaine. But it's what he did next that sealed the club's fate. He tried to hire undercover agents to murder rival gang members and, most fatally, offered military-grade weapons to assassinate American police officers. This was the final straw. The moment the clubs moved from local nuisance to national security threat, the gloves stayed off forever. The survivors and the doomed, the 2026 forecast. The landscape of the American road has changed. The era of the 100-bike show of force is dead. If 25 or more members gather today, they risk immediate federal conspiracy charges. The future for these clubs is a grim choice. Legitimatize, abandon the outlaw moniker and become a social riding club. Atomize, dissolve the chapters and operate as tiny, disconnected cells that are harder to track but impossible to coordinate. Extinction, for clubs like the Mongols in Florida or the Bandidos in Houston, the damage might already be terminal. They are hemorrhaging members to plea deals as loyalty evaporates in the face of life sentences. The final verdict. The fundamental truth of 2025 is undeniable. Federal law enforcement has unlimited resources, perfect patience, and a single goal. They will build cases for 10 years if they have to. They will coordinate across oceans. They will use the RICO Act to turn a biker's brotherhood into his indictment. Biker clubs thrived when they were bigger than the local sheriff. They cannot survive an era where the FBI, ATF, DA, and Homeland Security move as one. The war is over. The law won. The Wild West has finally been fenced in. As Volusia County Sheriff Chitwood warned, the arrests we've seen are not the grand finale. "This isn't the end," he whispered to the cameras. "This is just the beginning." The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is one of the most famous groups and easily the largest motorcycle club in the world, with a membership of over 6,467 chapters in 59 different countries. You might be wondering what makes this motorcycle club so special. Well, there are several reasons why anyone would want to join the Hells Angels. While a love of motorcycles is easily one of the most common motives, a sense of belonging, especially in an infamous club once shrouded in an aura of mystery and respect, is another. From a distance, the Hells Angels seems so cool, and it's easy for many to be enticed into wanting to join. However, joining this club isn't for the faint-hearted. Since many do not make the cut, becoming a full member of the Hells Angels can take a really long time, sometimes spanning years. To become a member of the Hells Angels, candidates are first expected to be true motorcycle enthusiasts. They must also own a valid driver's license and a motorcycle of over 750 cubic centimeters, as the average member is expected to ride at least 20,000 kilometers a year in strict formation. Candidates are also required to drive US-built motorcycles, with Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Victory being the most common brands. Prospective members who have applied to be law enforcement officers, such as prison guards or police, are excluded from the club. Child molesters are also not allowed. The initiation process starts with the candidate passing the above criteria. Once that is out of the way, the candidate, now considered a prospective member, enters the stage of being deemed a hang-around. As a hang-around, prospective members are invited to meet older club members at some club meetings, and this stage could last for a long time. If the hang-around still shows interest at this stage, they are then deemed an associate. They remain classified this way for a year or two. After these years pass, an associate is reclassified as a prospect and is now allowed to fully participate in some of the club's activities. However, they do not have voting privileges since the initiation process is still underway. If the prospect proves they have what it takes, they are then upgraded to full membership or full patch, which is the last phase of the initiation process. The full patch refers to the club's four-piece insignia given to its members. This includes the Death Head logo, two rockers, a top rocker with the words Hell's Angels, and a bottom rocker showing the country, state, or charter location. Rectangular MC patch beneath the wings of the Death Head signifies Motorcycle Club. Prospects are only allowed to wear the bottom rocker along with the MC patch. The final stage of becoming a full member begins with the voting process. A prospect can only become a full member or full patch when they are unanimously voted in by all full members of the club. Hence, a prospect is often required to travel across chapters in their country and introduce themselves to other members. Voting becomes easier once these members have gotten to know the prospect and have vetted them. The prospect must receive 100% of the votes, as a single vote against them means the prospecting stage continues until they are fully voted in. Once they have been voted in, prospects are required to reaffirm their loyalty to the club, and the Hells Angels rocker is finally awarded to them as the final part of the initiation ceremony. At this stage, known as being patched, prospects become full members. Full members of the Hells Angels are recognized by their infamous insignia, the full patch, but this remains the property of the club, not the member, even after the initiation process. The club's official colors are red lettering on a white background, leading to the nickname, the Red and White. Members wear their patches on leather or denim jackets and vests. Some members wear an AFFA patch, meaning Angels Forever, Forever Angels, indicating lifelong membership. Another patch consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts beneath the words, Filthy Few, worn by select members. According to the club, this patch is a type of merit badge awarded to members who are first to arrive at and last to leave a party. However, some law enforcement officers allege that this patch is worn by members who have committed or are willing to commit murder on behalf of the club. In some cases, members may wear patches that signify their rank within the organization. These small, rectangular patches display the titles of the members in red letters on a white background. Common titles include President, Sergeant-at-Arms, Treasurer, Vice President, and more. If a member is ejected from the club or chooses to leave, they are required to return their patches to the club. Members are expected to pay dues that finance burials and motorcycle runs. Attendance at club meetings and motorcycle runs is also mandatory. Contrary to popular belief, most Hells Angels members are not drug addicts. The club prohibits intravenous drug use, and many members are known to be fitness enthusiasts. According to Jay Dobbins, an investigative agent who went undercover and infiltrated the Hells Angels from 2001 to 2003, the club has strict rules concerning interactions with women. Wives or girlfriends of members are strictly off-limits, and violations of this rule are met with severe, often violent, consequences. Dobbins also mentioned that members are not allowed to speak to one another while wearing sunglasses. Additionally, members must remove their riding gloves before shaking hands. Prospects are forbidden from patting a member's back or touching the Hells Angels patch, with severe consequences for breaking this rule. Those who leave the club on bad terms have all possessions related to the club taken away from them, including the removal of tattoos that indicate club affiliation. Prospects, along with members' girlfriends and wives, are allowed to wear the number 81, which stands for Support 81, with 8 representing H and 1 representing. The Hells Angels do not have an overall president. Instead, the club is governed by regional officers representing localized chapters at monthly meetings. These chapters have a degree of autonomy regarding minor policy changes and member discipline. Rankings in the club's organization include president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, sergeant-at-arms, and road captain, each carrying out significant duties. Responsibilities within their chapters vary, and regional officers are divided into two groups. The first group comprises those who attend the West Coast Officers Meeting, also known as WESCOM. The Westcom group is charged with conducting the policy actions and affairs of the Hells Angels chapters in the western United States. The second group includes those who attend the East Coast Officers Meeting, or ECOM, which governs the chapters in the eastern United States. Although the Hells Angels' founding location was in San Bernardino, California, its unofficial founding location eventually moved to Oakland, California, under the leadership of Sonny Barger, who succeeded Otto Friedli as the de facto national president. This shift made the Oakland chapter one of the most prominent and regarded as first among equals, due to Barger's reputation. The Oakland chapter has the largest membership of any chapter in the United States and is responsible for major decision-making within the club. Any other motorcycle club wishing to be affiliated with the Hells Angels must first apply to the Oakland chapter for membership and be monitored and approved by them before being granted membership. The Hells Angels' traditional motto is "Angels Forever, Forever Angels." They also have other slogans such as, "When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead, and when in doubt, knock them out." The latter coined by New York City chapter member Vincent "Big Vinny" Girolamo. Joining the Hells Angels is far from easy. Prospective members often spend years on a waitlist and devote their remaining years as full members to the club. The Hells Angels are not a casual, recreational group. For many members, joining is one of the best experiences of their lives, but leaving the club is a different matter altogether. Members can only leave if they are expelled, as there is no concept of retirement, except in rare cases where certain members are allowed to depart. Still, some have taken the daring step to leave. One notable example is George Christie. "I felt we became the people we rebelled against, and that's exactly what I told them at the meeting when I left," Christie said. "At one time, we would interact with all the clubs up and down the coast, and by 2011 we were fighting every major outlaw bike club in the United States, plus law enforcement." That's where some people lost perspective of what the initial intent was of the whole outlaw lifestyle. It seemed more military, like an army fighting another army. Christie was a Hells Angels leader for 35 years out of a 40-year membership. He was drawn to the outlaw biker lifestyle as a kid in the mid-1950s when he first saw a long-haired, denim-jacketed biker riding through the streets without a care in the world. Christie described that moment as life-changing. What truly fueled his interest, however, was an incident during high school when his principal accused him of cheating because he scored highly on an IQ test. Christie, who did poorly in school, thought, "If this is a polite society, no thank you," as he left the principal's office. After high school, Christie joined the Marine Corps. When he was discharged, he bought a motorcycle and started hanging out with other biker groups, such as the Satan's Slaves and Question Marks, though his ultimate dream was to join the Hells Angels. By 1976, Christie had become a full-patch member, and soon after, he rose in rank, founding the Ventura, California chapter in 1978 and even carrying the Olympic torch during the 1984 Los Angeles Games. Despite being a high-ranking member, Christie also worked for the Department of Defense. In 1978, his co-workers discovered he was a Hells Angels leader, a fact that came to light during a brutal conflict with a rival group involving fights, shootings, and bombings, which led to his resignation. Trouble followed Christie. He was later charged with orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot involving a leader of the Mexican Mafia prison gang. While in prison, Christie learned that rival clubs did not fight each other behind bars, which motivated him to push for peace on the streets. By the time he was acquitted in 1987, Christie had already started negotiating peace between rival motorcycle clubs. His efforts seemed successful until the 2002 Laughlin River Run, an annual motorcycle rally in Nevada, where a brawl between the Mongols and Hells Angels left 3 people dead. By 2011, the Hells Angels were embroiled in conflicts with nearly every major outlaw motorcycle club and law enforcement. Christie wanted the wars to end, but others did not share his vision. "I felt that groups were fracturing off, doing their own thing, if you will. It was tough," he said. "I decided that if I stayed in the club, it would strictly be ego-driven. I didn't want to be the guy who used to be a Hells Angels leader." In 2011, Christie made his decision to leave. He walked into a club meeting, announced his departure, removed his patches, and laid them on the table. His final words to his former club members were, "We have become the people that we rebelled against. And I'm gone." While Christie argued that he followed protocols and formally quit the club, it appeared that attempting to leave was a mistake. He was soon accused of being an informant, and his status was changed to "out bad." meaning he was no longer in good standing with the Hells Angels and could not have any relations or contact with other members. In essence, he had been excommunicated from the club. Christie claimed he was shamed on social media and faced accusations from people, including strangers. The sense of kinship and community that had initially spurred Christie to join the outlaw biker lifestyle was stripped from him simply because he chose to leave. In an interview, Christie was asked why being out bad still seemed to bother him. His response was, "Being out bad with no contact in the outlaw motorcycle world is like a stigma. They don't want people interacting with you. They don't want people talking to you. Club members who I was friendly with after I left had their memberships in jeopardy if they communicated with me." He continued, "When I left, it kind of reminded me of a divorce. At first, everyone wanted to be amiable. They weren't happy about my decision, but they understood it. As things progressed, it became aggressive, and it was hard to take. The phone rings, and you pick up, and it's one of your former brothers telling you you're no longer a friend to us. That's my whole life because I didn't have many friends outside the club. It was a hard pill to swallow." George Christie wasn't the only one to suffer this tragic fate after leaving the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. "My name is Jay Dobbins. I'm a retired undercover federal agent and I infiltrated the Hells Angels," said Jay Dobbins, who infiltrated the Hells Angels between 2001 and 2003. Dobbins, a former football player and athlete, decided to join the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF, after surviving a critical shooting during an operation in 1987. By 2002, when the war between the Hells Angels and the Mongols was at its peak, federal law enforcement launched an undercover operation called Operation Black Biscuit. Dobbins, posing as a gun runner and debt collector, went by the name Jay Davis, and was known to gang members as Jaybird. Dobbins staged a fake murder to gain the Hells Angels' trust. A law enforcement officer posed as a Mongols biker, covered in lamb blood and brains, and was laid in a shallow grave for photographs and videos. Dobbins mailed a blood-stained Mongols patch to the Hells Angels, impressing the leadership so much that they immediately voted him as a fully patched member of the Mesa, Arizona charter, although they later denied this. Unfortunately, as Dobbins moved up the ranks, the lifestyle began to strain his family life. "I had an argument with my wife. At one point, I came home after being away for an extended period. I walked in like Jaybird Davis walks into my house, and she's like, 'You cannot be gone and come here and treat me and our kids like we're street people.'" Despite acknowledging that the Hells Angels could be dangerous, Dobbins admitted to respecting some members. After his true identity was revealed in 2004, the Hells Angels felt betrayed and directed their threats at his family. Plans to inject him with HIV, gang rape his wife and daughter, and kidnap and murder his son were uncovered. The ATF downplayed the threats, claiming no one had forced Dobbins to go undercover. Even when an arson attack occurred at his Tucson, Arizona home with his family inside, the Bureau didn't take the threat seriously. Though his family survived, their home and belongings were destroyed. Dobbins filed and won a lawsuit against the ATF in 2014. He later wrote a book, No Angel, My Harrowing Undercover Journey to the Inner Circle of the Hells Angels, which became a New York Times bestseller. The book detailed the Hells Angels' investigation and its impact on his career and life. Despite the tragic events following his departure, Dobbins now runs a company focused on law enforcement training. Finally, there is the case of David LaBrava. Unlike others who faced hardship after leaving the Hells Angels, LaBrava left in good standing. Known for his role as Happy Loman in the FX series Sons of Anarchy, LaBrava was a real-life member of the Hells Angels. Initially hired as a technical advisor for the show in 2008 to ensure accurate depictions of a motorcycle club, he was later given a role and portrayed the hitman Happy Loman. LaBrava stayed with the Hells Angels until 2019, when he announced his departure via an Instagram post. "I want to say I am no longer a member of the largest motorcycle club in the world, the Hells Angels MC. The only club I'm a member of now is the human race," he wrote. He added that it was his own decision to leave and that he was no longer a patch holder, considering himself a civilian. Unlike others, LaBrava's exit was amicable, and he has had no negative experiences with the club since. Non-bikers might not understand the allure of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, but motorcycle enthusiasts are often in awe of the club, eager to join. This respect is linked to the club's storied history. According to the Hells Angels official website, the first club was founded on March 17, 1948, in Fontana, San Bernardino, California. Before then, various motorcycle clubs existed independently. Otto Friedli, a World War II veteran, was credited with founding the club after breaking away from the Pissed Off Bastards Motorcycle Club due to a feud with a rival gang. Another theory suggests that the Hells Angels was founded on November 15, 1951, by Dick White in San Bernardino. White was said to be a member of the Redlands Road Runners. The club attributes its name to Arvid Olsen, an acquaintance of the founders who served in the Hells Angel Squadron of the Flying Tigers during World War II. The club's official colors, red and white, and its charter, allegedly drawn up in 1950, reflect this heritage. Chapters began to emerge across California, operating independently. The San Francisco chapter formed in 1954, followed by North Sacramento in 1956. Sonny Barger took over leadership from Friedli and created the Oakland chapter in 1957, uniting the chapters under common bylaws. The Hells Angels expanded beyond California, opening an international chapter in New Zealand in 1961. On July 30, 1969, 2 London chapters were formed, and by 1973, they merged into the London Charter. Canada followed in 1977 with a chapter in Montreal, expanding to other parts of Quebec. However, the Hells Angels didn't quite succeed in taking over the Quebec biking scene without interference, as there was a violent turf war that left over 160 dead, 300 injured, and over 100 bikers incarcerated. By the end of the 70s, the club already had charters in Australia, and in 1984, Rio de Janeiro had its chapter, making it the first South American country with a HAMC charter. By 1993, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club had spread across continents and was launched in Johannesburg, South Africa. Turkey became the first Muslim country to have a Hells Angels chapter in 2009. Now, the club has a membership of over 6,467 chapters across 59 countries, making it the largest motorcycle club in the world. However, there was still a veil of mystery over the club, as many from the outside weren't quite sure what went on within. Sometimes, the Hells Angels are depicted as free-spirited men bound by brotherhood and loyalty. On the other hand, they are also depicted as a violent criminal gang, and the murder of an 18-year-old concertgoer by one of their members didn't help this reputation. Hells Angels members were essentially known as drug addicts and barroom fighters. However, law enforcement and intelligence agencies like the United States Department of Justice, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, and even Europol all considered the Hells Angels an organized crime syndicate. Although the Hells Angels claim not to be a racially segregated club, members are often white men. According to Sonny Barger in a 2000 BBC interview, the club as a whole is not racist, but we probably have enough racist members that no black guy is going to get in it. He also said, if you're a motorcycle rider and you're white, you want to join the Hells Angels. If you're black, you want to join the East Bay Dragons. That's how it is, whether anyone likes it or not. We don't have no blacks, and they don't have no whites. While Barger claims the Hells Angels weren't racist, a 1983 incident proved otherwise. The Satan's Angels Motorcycle Club in Vancouver had a black member before it decided to merge with the Hells Angels in 1983. However, the San Francisco and Anchorage chapters threatened to expel the Vancouver chapter when they learned there was a black member. The issue was only resolved when the man decided to change his nationality to Hawaiian. In another case, a chapter in Windsor, England, was only granted official status in 1985 after its only black member had died in police custody. In their support, an African-American biker group known as the Chosen Few Motorcycle Club stated in a 1996 Ebony article that they didn't perceive any racial animosity from members of the Hells Angels. They also said they allowed members of the Hells Angels into their territory, where everyone parties and gets together. The Hells Angels echoed this, stating, "We don't have any Negro members. but maintained that it was because no black individuals had sought membership. It is unclear why many people joined the Hells Angels, but one common factor seems to be a sense of community. In the case of former leader George Christie, he had been drawn by the free-spiritedness of the members and wanted to be part of this close-knit community of bikers. Undercover agent Jay Dobbins also hinted at this as one of the reasons why he respected members of the club. In a law enforcement conference in El Paso, Dobbins said that the Hells Angels, even with their fearsome reputations, offered members a sense of belonging in society. "You can be, in essence, an unimportant, unknown person," Dobbins said. "When you join one of those gangs and they put that patch on your back, all of a sudden people are paying attention to you. People are buying you drinks, people are giving you drugs, women want to put their arm around your shoulder, you're intimidating, you scare people, and to some people, that's intoxicating," he said. Therefore, it is little wonder why George Christie appeared slightly hurt by this loss of community when he was declared out bad by the club. Another thing that stands out about the Hells Angels is how seriously they expect loyalty from members. Christie appeared to have betrayed the club by leaving, and they made sure he paid for this by not only isolating him from the community but also ensuring the general public saw him in a negative light. He even went on to serve prison time for crimes he had committed earlier, 3 years after he left the Hells Angels. The same thing played out with Dobbins when he was revealed to be an undercover agent. The threats were just a way for the club to show their disappointment at the betrayal. Despite these acts unveiling the dark side of the Hells Angels, they maintain that they are not a criminal or violent organization. Members of the club continue to assert that they are only a group of motorcycle enthusiasts from all over the world who want to ride motorcycles together and organize social events. They insist that crimes committed by any member of the Hells Angels are the sole responsibility of the parties involved and not the club as a whole. Even though the Hells Angels insist on being a social group, there are several instances that have shown the violent nature of the club. First is the tragic case of Meredith Curly Hunter Jr., the 18-year-old American who was stabbed to death by a member of the Hells Angels at the 1969 Altamont Free Concert. What makes the death of Meredith Hunter most unfortunate was that the incident was caught on camera and became a central scene in the documentary Gimme Shelter by the Maysles brothers. 18-year-old Hunter was a bubbly teen from Berkeley, California, known for his flashy dress and hard-to-miss afro. In 1969, he attended the infamous Altamont Free Concert with his white, blonde girlfriend, a friend, and his girlfriend, traveling from Berkeley to the event. His sister, Dixie, had warned him not to attend, as racism was still prevalent in the outer reaches of Alameda County. However, Hunter shrugged it off but armed himself with a .22 Smith & Wesson revolver just in case he needed protection. It's important to note that the unfortunate incident at the Altamont Free Concert could have been avoided had the event been well planned. There were hundreds of thousands of people at the venue, and the stage was set so low that the crowd pressed in, making the stage look small and uncomfortable. Members of the Hells Angels present at the concert saw this and took advantage of the situation, offering to prevent artists from being approached by overzealous fans who attempted to get on the stage. All they needed in exchange for this service was $500 worth of beer. They parked their motorcycles in front of the stage and ensured no one tried to get close. By the time the Rolling Stones mounted the stage later that night, the crowd had become restless and was pressing on the stage. The Hells Angels, already drunk, began throwing their empty beer cans at the restless crowd, which further increased the tension in the air. The lead singer, Mick Jagger, had to pause and speak to the crowd, urging them to calm down and stop pushing. "I can't do any more than just ask you, beg you," he said. "Just to keep it together, you can do it. It's within your power. Everyone, Hells Angels, everybody, let's just keep ourselves together." Still, the crowd pressed on, and Hunter, with his bright lime green suit, could be spotted in the crowd. After a few minutes of calm, the band started performing again. This time, Hunter climbed up a speaker box next to the stage. He then got into a scuffle with the Hells Angels on guard and was chased back into the crowd, where 4 other angels descended on him. After a few minutes, Hunter, who had been high on drugs, angrily returned to the front of the stage. He was so furious that his girlfriend, Patty Bredhoft, tearfully begged him to move farther back into the crowd with her. From the footage captured, Hunter was seen suddenly lunging at someone in the crowd, drawing what appeared to be a revolver, and pointing it in the air. Then, a man wearing a Hells Angels uniform is seen rushing at the teenager with his hand raised, holding what was later identified as a knife. The Hells Angels member, identified as Alan Passaro, proceeded to stab Hunter twice. By the time Hunter's body was recovered, he had been stabbed 5 times in the upper back and was stomped upon by other Hells Angels members. The footage then cuts to Hunter's girlfriend crying at the sight of her boyfriend's body being wrapped up by medical examiners at the scene. In total, 4 people died at the concert, 2 by a hit-and-run car accident and 1 by an LSD-induced drowning in an irrigation canal. The stabbing of Meredith Hunter gave the Hells Angels a bad reputation as a violent group, and this was worsened after Alan Passaro, the member who had stabbed Hunter, was acquitted of the crime on grounds of self-defense. This was just one of the many instances where the Hells Angels proved to be deadly. J. Dobbins, in an interview, also talked about how a woman had been murdered by the Hells Angels in Mesa, Arizona. The Hells Angels in Mesa had murdered a woman, an innocent woman. They was in their clubhouse, right? Yeah, they basically recruited her off the street to come to a party. The party got out of hand. She mouthed off in the wrong place at the wrong time. Man, you don't talk on these dudes in their clubhouse, and you don't insult them. He then narrated what the club did to her. She took a beating in the Mesa clubhouse. They beat her down and then they stuffed her in the trunk of a car and drove her from Mesa out to Apache Junction, Arizona, which is further east, and cut her head off. These notable events showed how brutal the Hells Angels could be when faced with what was perceived to be disrespect or even betrayal. No matter how they tried to assert their innocence, the Hells Angels have created a bad reputation among law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Their members are constantly caught up in robberies, extortion, drug dealing, murder, gun running, and even prostitution operations. The truth is, you never can know what goes on behind the scenes of this motorcycle club unless you join, and clearly, becoming a member comes with a heavy price. Unless you are bold enough, the tragic fate of leaving the Hells Angels can be greatly terrifying, and if you are not careful, it can cost all that you hold dearly. When a prospect becomes a full-fledged member, they get a vest with the famous logo and name on the back. If one of the bikers gets arrested, he'll hand his vest to a fellow member to avoid tainting it in jail. If they get hurt and need an emergency procedure, they'll do whatever possible to prevent the vest from being cut or torn off. They have a dress code. The guidelines on this one vary a bit from chapter to chapter. Some are not even allowed to wear shorts, no matter how hot it gets. The most common are charters who wear all black. Some allow blue jeans and camouflage patterns. The color and design codes can help distinguish which charter they belong to. There's an order that they ride in. The road captain and charter president remain at the front of the group. From there, the bikers align based on seniority and rank. The older members will stay closer to the front, followed by newer members and ending with prospects in the back. They all pull over together. If one of them gets pulled over by a cop, they all stop. A bit intimidating for the cop, I'm sure. It signifies how the brotherhood is linked like family. If you mess with one Hells Angel, you mess with them all. They can't work for a prison. Given the Hells Angels' history with law enforcement, they aren't allowed to work for a prison while in the group. Members also cannot be police officers due to the conflict of interest. The group stands for freedom in the sense that they run by their own rules, so prison guards and law enforcement officers are out of the question. You can't share information about fellow members. If a member were to rat out a fellow brother, they could expect to get kicked out of the group. The Hells Angels website clearly states, "We do not answer questions about members, not even missing ones. Once a Hells Angel, always a Hells Angel. Once you're an official Hells Angel, there's no backing out. Members don't retire, and the only time they exit the group is if they're kicked out for breaking a rule. Your charter essentially becomes a second family. When one of them passes away, everyone unites to honor the memory of their fallen brother. No talking to the media. Since the Hells Angels are very secretive in their activities, none of them are allowed to talk to the media. Harleys only. To be a Hells Angel, you must own a Harley Davidson. Riding only Harleys is a Hells Angels tradition that runs along the same lines as the sacred vest. It holds value because it's a part of what makes them who they are. They ride thousands of miles a year together. According to their website, the Hells Angels ride around 12,000 miles together every year. While Hells Angels are like brothers, their connection is founded on their shared love of motorcycles. They'll happily spend hours on the road. Show up to club events. Members who fail to show up to meetings and hangouts indicate to others that they are missing the point of the club. The Biker Brotherhood is known for having a strict attendance code. Those who continually miss events are seen as disrespectful and are not likely to make it past the hanging around phase of recruitment. It's a brotherhood, not a sisterhood. Hells Angels refers to itself as a brotherhood. Thus, you'll only see men with the death head insignias on their back. Though women aren't technically in the club, they do play a major role in it. Many of the Hells Angels have wives and families. If he's going to be a part of the crew, then his partner has to understand the commitment and be okay with the lifestyle and all that comes with it. The Hells Angels official website attributes the official Death's Head insignia design to Frank Sadalek, past president of the San Francisco Charter. The colors and shape of the early-style jacket emblem, before 1953, were copied from the insignias of the 85th Fighter Squadron and the 552nd Medium Bomber Squadron. The Hells Angels have a system of patches similar to military medals. The specific meaning of each patch is not publicly known, but the patches identify each biker's specific or significant actions or beliefs. The official colors of the Hells Angels are red lettering displayed on a white background, hence the club's nickname, the Red and White. The patches are worn on leather or denim jackets and vests. Red and white are also used to display the number 81 on many patches, as in Support 81, Route 81. The 8 and 1 stand for the respective positions in the alphabet of H and D. Friends and supporters of the club use these in deference to club rules, which purport to restrict the wearing of Hells Angels imagery to club members. The diamond-shaped 1%er patch is also used, displaying 1% in red on a white background with a red marrowed border. The term 1%er is said to be a response to the American Motorcyclist Association, AMA, comment on the Hollister incident to the effect that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens and 1% were outlaws. The AMA has no record of such a statement and calls this story apocryphal. Most members wear a rectangular patch, again, white background with red letters and a red marrowed border, identifying their respective charter locations. Another similarly designed patch reads, Hells Angels. When applicable, members of the club wear a patch denoting their position or rank within the organization. The patch is rectangular and, like those described above, displays a white background with red letters and a red marrowed border. Some examples of the titles used are President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Sergeant at Arms. This patch is usually worn above the charter location patch. Some members also wear an AFFA patch, which stands for Angels Forever, Forever Angels, referring to their lifelong membership in the club. An additional patch worn by select club members consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts below the words, Filthy Few. Some law enforcement officials claim that the Filthy Few patch is awarded only to those who have committed or are prepared to commit murder on the club's behalf. Hells Angels have denied this interpretation, however, comparing it instead to a merit badge awarded to those who are the first to arrive at a party and the last to leave. According to reports from law enforcement and prosecutors, another patch similar to the Filthy Few patch is the Di Quialo patch. Di Quialo is a reference to El Diguelo, a bugle call played by the regimental band of Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna's army at the Battle of the Alamo. This patch allegedly signifies that the wearer has fought law enforcement on arrest. There is no common convention as to where the patches are placed on members' jackets/vests. Angels Forever, Forever Angels, is also the club's traditional motto. Other Hells Angels slogans include, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. And when in doubt, knock 'em out, which was coined by New York City Charter member Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo. The Hells Angels incorporated in 1966, trademarking the club's name and 4 symbols. The club filed a trademark infringement lawsuit for the first time on October 26, 1989, when the Hells Angels lodged a federal lawsuit in Los Angeles against Concord New Horizons, which produced the film Nom Angels, and against Media Home Entertainment, which distributed the film on video, over infringements on the club's registered trademarks. The suit was settled out of court. According to the Globe and Mail, the Hells Angels considered seeking an injunction to block the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation from broadcasting the miniseries The Last Chapter, because of how closely the biker gang at the center of the series resembled the Hells Angels. Tension filled the air, thick enough to choke on. The Outlaws weren't happy, not one bit, and Mel knew it was only a matter of time before the powder keg exploded. Every day became a waiting game, a test of nerves. Mel's brothers looked to him for guidance and strength, but even he had his doubts and fears. Still, he couldn't show weakness, not now. Mel tightened security, ran drills, and prepared for the worst. But what kept us strong was the unity we had with each other. We had a young crew, me being the youngest, Mel reflected. Most of the guys trained back then. There was no MMA, so we were just up pounding on the bags. You had to make sure you were in shape, but you couldn't be so big that you couldn't fight in a bar. Nothing could have prepared them for what came next. June 13, 1994, was a date that would be etched in blood and fire. The Hells Angels clubhouse, their sanctuary and home, was reduced to rubble in an instant. 100 pounds of C4 explosives had delivered a message written in destruction. They put 100 pounds of C4 in a car, shaped it, and drove it up. Our clubhouse was on Grand Avenue, a busy street, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of the week. Traffic was going by and everything. They built the bomb in the trunk of this car. By some miracle, no one was inside when the bomb went off. But the message was crystal clear. This was war. Mel stood in the debris, rage boiling inside him. The next move was his, and it would change everything. Retaliation came swift and merciless. Mel knew the rules, an eye for an eye. But this was beyond that. This was an all-out war. We were doing that tit-for-tat thing, Mel said. It became personal. We were running into each other's bars and doing stuff like that. But then, with the bombings, it turned the game around. That was the first of a few that happened. He gathered his most trusted lieutenants, planning in secret. No half measures, no mercy, no survivors. The streets of Chicago ran red as chaos reigned supreme. Shootings, bombings, brutal beatings. No one was safe. We had no clue, man. These guys were using bombs and remote starts. We didn't know how to do that, so we had to figure it out. We were still trying to run into the bars and fight hand-to-hand as they were finding us. The cops were overwhelmed, and soon the feds took notice. But Mel couldn't stop, he wouldn't stop. Every attack fueled his rage and determination. In the 90s, it got crazy with the bombings and shootings. It went from playground fights to shooting on motorcycles. We had to keep our guys safe. I have the tombstones tattooed on my arms for the brothers that got killed in that war. When you see a brother you're tight with lying in a casket, and his 16-year-old daughter is saying goodbye and rubbing her father's hair for the last time, it hits different. As the war dragged on, Mel's reputation grew. He was feared on the streets and respected in the underworld, but he was also a prime target for rival gangs and law enforcement alike. The pressure was mounting from all sides. In the midst of the chaos, I never lost sight of my goal: to make the Chicago Hells Angels the most powerful club in the Midwest. But as the body count rose and the feds closed in, I started to wonder if the price of power was too high. I remember standing at the casket with a few brothers, putting his patch over him before we closed it. His daughter's goodbye brought tears to my eyes. I thought, we did this. Our decisions led to this. How do you say, time out, in a war like this? You don't. You just go with the flow and be part of the environment created around you. Little did Mel know, the biggest battle of his life was yet to come, and it wouldn't be fought on the streets but in a courtroom. The war had caught the attention of forces far beyond Chicago, and they were about to bring the full weight of the law down on Mel Chansey and his brothers. Brothers, the fall. Blue lights and sirens pierced the night. The law was closing in. Mel knew it was coming. But when you have 2 bombings on one day, that's something they had never seen before. After we hit their clubhouse, that was the full court press. That's when the government came in and said, "Hey, No more of this. Violence on violence, biker on biker violence, they don't like, but it's passable. But when you start Beirooting the city, they come with the full-court press. The feds swarmed everywhere, kicking down doors and making arrests. The magic word was RICO. The club's worst nightmare came to life. At the time, Janet Reno was the U.S. Attorney General. We all knew she was no-nonsense. She put a team together and said, "Get both sides." That's how the RICO investigation started. Put the city on edge. She nicknamed the operation Operation Lucifer and put the full-court press on us and the outlaws. In 1997, the first RICO indictments hit, and they targeted the outlaws first. They had them on predicate acts, fighting us, the bombing. The guy who placed the bomb flipped for the government later in life, giving them the full story of what happened. Before the indictment hit the Hells Angels, Mel received a 4-year sentence for beating up a DJ who was abusing his ex-girlfriend. I went to prison in '98 for beating that guy up. Remember Dee's story in the house? I beat the guy who was abusing my ex-girlfriend. I kind of took it to a level, and I got a 4-year sentence for that one. So, I'm in state prison in '98, knowing that the RICO case is being put together against us. I'm hearing the buzz from the streets, with people telling me they're building this RICO case on us. Mel watched his empire crumble as brother turned on brother. One of the Hell's henchmen, who hadn't made it to the Angels' side, flipped. He was a good friend of Mel's, and Mel didn't know he had turned. Mel was the target. His name was Jim, and the authorities told Jim, "We want Mel." Plea deals and witness protection programs shattered the old code of silence. But Mel wouldn't break. He couldn't. Even as the evidence mounted and the charges piled up, he stood firm, a captain going down with his ship. The trial was a media circus, with Mel at the center. He remained defiant to the end, but the verdict was never really in doubt, guilty on all counts. So, I pled guilty to mail fraud and got 18 months. The day I was released from the state penitentiary, I went into the Sally Port. They switched my handcuffs, and the marshals picked me up and took me to a federal holding facility, then designated me to a federal prison. I really did back-to-back sentences. As they led him away in chains, Mel couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? All the blood, all the sacrifice. For what? A patch, a reputation, or something more, something he couldn't yet see? As Mel's sentence neared its end, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. In late 2000, Mel Chancey walked out of federal prison a free man once more. Chicago's own outlaw motorcycle club, the Hells Henchmen, was where Mel found his tribe. But respect had to be earned the hard way. They said, the stories. The same guys that showed me how to train heavy and crazy were the same guys that showed me how to do the motorcycle lifestyle. But that's how I stepped into that world. He started as a prospect, the lowest of the low, cleaning, running errands, and taking orders from everyone. It wasn't glamorous, but Mel didn't complain. He had something to prove, not just to the club but to himself and the world. "How old are you now?" they asked. I said, "It's only been a year and some change. I'm 19. "Man, you're going to age rough. You look older. You want to come in the club?" "I do." "Okay, come on. Let's make it official. You become an official hang-around and a prospect, and then you get voted for your patch." Yeah, so that's how it happened, and that's what I did. I was very eager. When Mel got into that world, he wanted to learn everything about it. He worked harder, trained harder, fought harder. His fists did the talking, and people started listening. Rivals learned to fear him, and brothers learned to trust him. But in that world comes the nonsense, the violence, the tit-for-tat with other clubs. I was into that part. Those guys showed me the violent side of the lifestyle. Slowly but surely, Mel climbed the ranks of the Hells Henchmen. The older members watched, sizing him up. Was this kid for real, or just another wannabe? Mel's dedication was put to the test time and time again. He ran errands that often skirted the edge of legality. I would be out every night as a prospect doing all this stuff. I stood watch during deals that I knew better than to ask about. And when rival gangs came knocking, I was always first in line to defend my brothers. "Learned it fast and I watched it," Mel said. "I watched how some of these guys came right in, and when it was time to fight and throw hands, there was no question about it. Finally, after months of grueling tests and trials, the moment Mel had been waiting for arrived. They called him to the front of the clubhouse. The air was thick with anticipation. The president, a grizzled old biker with more scars than teeth, looked Mel up and down. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, with a gruff nod, he handed Mel his colors. Mel Chansey was now a full-patch member of the Hell's Henchmen. "I got my patch right before I was 21, Mel recalled. As he donned the jacket for the first time, feeling the weight of the patches on his back, Mel knew his life had changed forever. But this was just the beginning. The real test lay ahead. So when I finally was in the club and got my patch, it was probably not even 6 to 8 months later when I became our sergeant-at-arms. What challenges awaited? What sacrifices would be required? I did that for a long time, Mel said. And then finally, when I got in the club and started seeing what guys were doing, I thought, man, this working for a living is pretty brutal here. I'm trying to work 10-hour days in the hot sun and then hang out all night and go on trips. This is a little crazy. That's when I learned the cocaine game. Back then in the 80s, it was huge. I saw guys making $2,000 a week and I thought, wow, they're not killing themselves here. So I went in. The road was long and it was about to get bumpy. But Mel was ready, or at least he thought he was. A year that would change everything for Mel and his brothers. Whispers in the wind spoke of something big coming down the pipeline. The Hells Angels, the most notorious motorcycle club in the world, wanted in on Chicago turf. It was an offer the Hells Henchmen couldn't refuse, but it came at a heavy price. Mel, now the youngest president in the club's history at just 23, recalled the moment. "One day, I walked into a meeting. I was a few minutes late. If you're late, you call up, 'Hey man, I got stuck by a train. I'm a few minutes late, pardon me, I'm right there.' I walked into the meeting, and everybody was in there. They said, 'Hey Rode, listen man, we took a vote, and you're not the sergeant-at-arms anymore.' I said, 'Really? How could you guys take a vote without me being here? How are you bringing this up to me without me being there? I'm not the sergeant-at-arms. Man, I bleed this chapter. What are you talking about?' That's when Jerry, his name was, said to me, 'Hey man, we nominated you to be the president.' I was like, 'What? Wow man.' In 1994,